Right now, it's time for our Way Black History Fact, and today's Way Black History Fact is sponsored by Major Threads. For innovative, fashionable sportswear, check majorthreads.com. We're going to talk about the other ways white slavers obtained African slaves. I'm going to share a bit from liverpoolmuseums.org.uk. Normally, this is something we use from United States-based stuff, but, we're not comfortable with our own history. So, and the second part of the show, of course, we're going to talk about other ways that America happened upon slaves. Anyway, the peoples of West Africa had a rich and varied history and culture long before European slavers arrived. They had a wide variety of political arrangements, including kingdoms, city-states, and other organizations, each with their own languages and culture. The Empire of Songhai and the kingdoms of Mali, Benin, and Congo were large and powerful, with monarchs heading complex political structures governing hundreds of thousands of subjects. In other areas, political systems were smaller and weaker, relying on agreements between people at village level. As in 16th century war-torn Europe, the balance of power between political states and groups was constantly changing. Art, learning, and technology flourished, and Africans were especially skilled in subjects like medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, as well as domestic goods. They made fine luxury items in bronze, ivory, gold, and terracotta for both local use and trade. West Africans had traded with Europeans through merchants in North Africa for centuries. The first traders to sail down the West African coast were the Portuguese in the 15th century. Later, the Dutch, British, French, and Scandinavians followed. They were mainly interested in precious items such as gold, ivory, and spices, particularly pepper. From the first contracts, European traders kidnapped and brought Africans for sale in Europe. However, it was not until the 17th century when plantation owners wanted more and more slaves to satisfy the increasing demand for sugar in Europe that transatlantic slaving became the dominant trade. European traders captured some Africans in raids along the coast, but bought most of them from the local African or African-European dealers. These dealers had a sophisticated network of trading alliances collecting groups of people together for trade. Most of the Africans who were enslaved were captured in battles or were kidnapped, though some were sold into slavery for debt and as punishment. The captives were marched to the coast, often enduring long journeys of weeks or even months, shackled to one another. At the coast, they were imprisoned in large stone forts built by European trading companies or in smaller wooden compounds. All right, now I'm going to share a bit from the New York Times Magazine discussing piracy, because not all slaves were bought, okay? Sometime in 1619, a Portuguese slave ship, the São João Bautista, traveled across the Atlantic Ocean with a hull filled with human cargo, captive Africans from Angola and southwestern Africa. The men, women, and children, most likely from the kingdoms of Ndongo and Congo, endured the horrific journey bound for a life of enslavement in Mexico. Almost half the captives had died by the time the ship was seized by 2 English pirate ships. The remaining Africans were taken to Point Comfort, a point near Jamestown, the capital of the English colony of Virginia, which the Virginia Company of London had established 12 years earlier. The colonist John Rolfe wrote to Sir Edwin Sandys of the Virginia Company that in August 1619, a Dutch man of war had arrived in the colony and brought not anything but 20 and odd Negroes, which the governor and Cape Merchant bought for virtuals. The Africans were most likely put to work in tobacco fields that had recently been established in the area. So, for folks that are not able to stick around for the second part of the show, we just want you to know that not all slaves were bought and sold by Africans into slavery, although there is a whole conversation that we have had and will continue to have about that. Many slaves were indeed kidnapped from Africa using piracy and other means.